This is the Jeff Santos Show.
Mike's up.
33 minutes past the hour. It is the Jeff Santos Show that you're tuned into, coming to you live from the South Coast here in southeastern Massachusetts. Time to go across Interstate 90 and land in the 206, the great city of Seattle. We find our Renaissance man. He is not only a great journalist, follow him in Democracy Watch News, catch him here every Tuesday at 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific, and of course, he's a great musician as well. And you can find him on YouTube. Mark Taylor-Canfield joins us on the line. Mark, how are you, sir? I know you're out on the boat, but there's a lot of news emanating from Seattle City Hall. Why don't we start there, my friend?
Well, it is a beautiful day out here on the water in my boat, and I'm having a great time because after days of smoky, unhealthy air, I can report that as of yesterday, the air quality index was 3, which is excellent, which is unheard of in most cities anyway. So, yeah, it's a joy. It's like a paradise out here. I feel like I'm in Tahiti or something. The sun is out after weeks of smoky skies. I'm sure later we're going to probably crack open a Elysium Immortal IPA, which makes you feel immortal if you drink one. And then, yeah, but at 3, but yeah, it's just great to be breathing clean air, to know that most of the forest fires are in this area anyway. Oh, by the way, a blue heron just flew by. That was pretty nice.
Now, are you on the Puget Sound, or are you in Lake Washington?
I'm headed to the Ship Canal again towards Puget Sound. So a lot of people like me, we moor our boats on the lakes, and then we go through the lock to get out to Puget Sound. Okay. But I wanted to do some diving and stuff today, and the Puget Sound is so cold that I decided to actually do some diving in the inland waters, and that was nice. The water is getting a little bit more chilly. The water was really warm in the middle of August, but it's cooled off a little bit. But it's still in the 70s, and it's really nice right now, Jeff. I mean, don't tell anyone, but it's really nice in Seattle, and it's so good not to have to breathe that terrible, terrible smoke. Basically, people just didn't leave their places for days at a time because it was back like towards the beginning of the pandemic when just nobody went out unless you absolutely had to. So that kind of cramped the city's style again. But now people are out. The weather is good. People are still wearing masks for other reasons still and practicing some social distancing. But there is you're right. There is a city council vote that's coming up. It's a breaking news story, folks, from Seattle. This is Mark Taylor-Canfield reporting from downtown Seattle on a boat. Headed out of here. So I won't be at that city council meeting, but I can stream it because it's all online now anyway. And so we'll be watching it on the boat and watching what the president of the city council, Lorena Gonzalez, has to say about the fact that Mayor Jenny Durkan vetoed the Seattle City Council after 100 days of protests. Mayor Jenny Durkan vetoed the Seattle City Council's budget cuts to the Seattle Police Department. They wanted to, through attrition and layoffs, they wanted to eliminate 100 jobs, and 32 of them actually would have been patrol officers. They voted 7-1 with Deborah Juarez abstaining, and then the mayor vetoed it. So they need 6 votes today. And then President Gonzalez, she also has an alternative plan, but our alternative Socialist Party council member, Kshama Sawant, says she's not going to vote for an alternative plan. It's either the original plan or nothing. So we'll see what happens. Nobody knows exactly. There was a council briefing earlier today that I was trying to follow, but I was also trying to get my gear together for this expedition we're out on today. So I'm not sure what the vote is going to be. Meanwhile, our Attorney General of the United States, William Barr, is calling Seattle an anarchist city that's permitting violence and and anarchy in the streets, and Mayor.
Yes,
Jenny Durkan
he has diagnosed from his doctorly perch there in Washington D.C., Portland, New York, and Seattle as anarchist cities, and apparently somebody in New York was sending along a video of the anarchy in Manhattan, and it's just like boring people walking around in the middle of the afternoon, taxi cabs going by, and it's about as tame as possibly could be. This is the BS coming out of the DOJ.
The worry I have today is only one thing, and that's staying out of the way of sailboats on my way out to Puget Sound. So I really am not too worried about the city under crisis, although the protests are continuing because, especially today, if the city council isn't able to overturn the mayor's veto, there will definitely be more protests against racism and police brutality. We also have this breaking story where the Seattle Police Department went out and arrested some people, I guess 4 or 5 people, for soliciting prostitution, and come to find out after they had him cuffed and ready to take him downtown that he was a police captain with the Seattle Police Department. So, that's not going to help the reputation of the SPD at all. But the issue there is that apparently they immediately uncuffed him, didn't detain him or anything. He's on leave right now, but I guess he still made like $174,000. So one of the proposals, by the way, Jeff, is that there would be a cap on the command staff's salaries, because in Seattle, the police generally are making over $100,000 a year. Some of them, one officer, as we reported before, made $414,000 more than the President of the United States. And granted, some of that is because they were working without a contract for a while, so that's back pay for what the new contract demands. But it just shows you that when people decry defunding of the police, they should probably check and see what the command staff salary is in their own city before they make claims like that, because I think there's probably some money we could cut, Jeff, and maybe provide some social services and some education. Well, luckily, the Mayor, Jenny Durkan, did set aside $95 million for education in the Seattle school district, so thank goodness I can report something good about her on that.
Well, that's
but
good.
General,
Let me ask you, Mark, because I think a lot of people are interested, and we'll take a couple of calls, including our good friend John in Minneapolis. The thing that I think that people are concerned about is that if the city council, I don't know if they can overrule what the mayor is doing. You need, obviously, police officers who care about the community and are not out there, to bash heads and to bully people. But I think that it is important. I think it is important to make that distinction. But I think what the Seattle City Council is doing and what Minneapolis was doing, and Keith Ellison as the Attorney General there, longtime lieutenant of Bernie Sanders, I think is some really important ideas that this country can learn from, and probably other cities can adopt. What are you hearing on that front?
Well, first of all, the city council proposal that the mayor, Jenny Durkan, former U.S. attorney, by the way, under the Obama administration, but she vetoed it. It was, Kshama Sawant said it really was not a cut because with federal grants, it would have made up all the difference. It was maybe like a 3% budget cut, but apparently Jenny Durkan can't even allow that. Meanwhile, there are protests going on all over the country, and she doesn't seem to realize that people are asking for at least something. Jeff, really, I understand what you were trying to say. What I'm saying from Seattle is that it wasn't even a defunding. It wasn't even close to any of the demands of the protesters, which at one point, in the chop zone, people were and still are demanding a 50% defunding, but that wasn't even close. This latest vote by the Seattle City Council, not even close. Nowhere in the ballpark in terms of a sports metaphor, right? Nowhere in the ballpark. So for the fact that the mayor will stand in the way of any kind of cut to the police department just shows that she's really not on the side of reform. She's on the side of the status quo and just keep the money rolling and keep the funding coming into her campaign, which she is coming up for re-election in 2021. And you can bet there will be some very serious challengers, because last time she ran against Carrie Noon, who was a local activists, basically. And there was a huge difference, Jeff, in those events, because I would go to see Jenny Durkan's campaign event, and it would be at the Sheraton. It would be at the same place that Barack Obama would stay when he came to town, right? Then I would go to see Carrie Moon's events, and it would be grassroots-oriented, funded, and it would be at the local brew pub. And you look out in the parking lot, and there, everybody's got old cars and Volkswagens or whatever. You go to Jenny Durkan's campaign event, and they were all Mercedes and Beamers. So I understood immediately that she represented a lot of money, and that was what was probably going to rule in Seattle, and it still is as of today. Because as of today, I can report that in Seattle, any reform or cutting of the police department or demilitarization of the police department, which is another thing that the Seattle City Council has been fighting for, has actually resulted in almost zero because of the backlash from more conservative elements and more wealthy elements, in a lot of cases, in the community. So now there's a recall campaign both against the mayor and also against Kshama Sawant, the socialist city council member. So politics are in a mess in Seattle, and everything's up in the air, and I have no idea what's going to happen next. After the whole CHOP incident and now these statements coming from the Attorney General, I really think that anything could happen. I hope that somebody really progressive, maybe like you had suggested, a musician or some famous actor or something, will run for mayor in Seattle.
Well, they need something to change, because that litany of mayors that you guys have had over the years is pretty poor for a great progressive city like Seattle.
Hey, all you sports voting people out there, don't cause big wigs. This guy has just caused a big wig, so I'm having to steer the boat into his wig directly. But we're okay. We're not going to. All right, let's go. Or anything.
Well, as you're steering your boat, let's go to Minneapolis and hear from my good friend John. John, I want to ask you about Minneapolis and how. The process is coming along for, a reform element of not the defunding of the police, but of reforming the police. Is anything new on that?
No, there isn't, because it will go to the voters. It's been delayed until the following year, and now the city council, I think most of them are pretty, they are adamant that they're going to continue with trying to restructure the police department, which it does need to be restructured, no doubt about it. And, property crimes and things like that are down, but we've had increases in other crimes. So I don't know how that will impact the vote, because it will go to a referendum and it will go next year, only because we have this thing called the commission that sets the amount of police, and it's out of the hands of the elected officials. It's the Charter Commission, and the Charter Commission were appointed by people that unfortunately are not as left of center as the city council. So that's where we're at with that. I was surprised we didn't make the list of anarchy cities, but I was hoping, I think it's quite an honor, to be considered, awake enough to want to protest against things that need to be protested against. The only thing that I've done illegally here is I planted an extra boulevard tree. So I'm a little worried about that. Maybe Mr. Barr will come after me, But
I don't think you have too much to worry about there, John. I think we accidentally disconnected you as well. But I don't know if you heard all of that, Mark. But our good friend John is I think being somewhat facetious about people coming after him. But this whole thing that Barr has done, is so problematic for the country, and why we need change in November. What is it like there on the Ginsburg front? How are people looking at it from your perspective there in the 206?
Well, it just seems like another factor to throw into the election and everything else that nobody was talking about until it happened. Well, we're getting some big waves right now. This is just because if you're a big boat and you go by another boat, even if it's a big boat and you're moving really fast, the wave will move the boat around. Anyway, I'm good though. But
stay safe, man.
What he was saying is interesting, because Portland New York City, Seattle. Anarchist towns. Well, let me say this, that the 130,000 people that were marching during the Women's March, as a reaction mostly to Donald Trump and his misogyny, then and the 80,000 people that marched during the Black Lives Matter march from the Central District in the Rainier Valley in Seattle, I think that about 99.9% of them would probably be not on board with the idea of being called an anarchist. So, not to say that there isn't a tradition of anarchism in the Northwest, but in terms of local politics, give me a break. The people in the White House and their spin doctors really are extreme in the way that they use hyperbole and exaggeration. They really don't understand what it's like to live in Seattle when you have a mayor who won't even allow a cut at all to the budget for the police after 100 days of protests, and then he calls her a leftist radical, and then they call the city an anarchist town where there's violence permitted and destruction. And I'm thinking, I'm looking at the horizon right now. I don't see any fires burning. I don't hear any fire sirens. I'm wondering what they're talking about. I guess they just make it up out of whole cloth and think that some people are stupid enough to accept it. But I'm sitting here in Seattle, and I'm telling you, the city is run mostly by corporations, and it has some progressive leadership, especially on the city council, who I also think are devoted to some kind of reform of the Seattle Police Department and demilitarization of the police department. They're not going to give up on that. And this ban on tear gas, by the way, Jeff, due to some of the court cases and the temporary restraining order, the TRO, is up on September 30th. So I guess maybe people should get their gas masks ready if they're going to go to a protest in Seattle after that. Because the protests, let's say the police in Seattle and Portland, as we said before, I'm quoting the Apocalypse Now, the Francis Ford Coppola, is they love the smell of tear gas in the morning. So if they get a chance to use it, you can bet they will.
No doubt at all. We're talking with our good friend, in the Puget Sound, I guess, right now, as we speak. Mark Taylor-Canfield, great musician, of course, a great journalist, Democracy Watch News. Let me ask you this. As Mark was talking about, they're going to have a ballot initiative. I mean, are you guys going to do anything, like that? And is there any, if you're not going to do it this year, maybe next year? When the mayor is up, to sort of do it that way, to go around the process and have a proposition issue?
I hope so. Knowing the amount of policy wonks here in Seattle, I mean, I know we're a long way from Washington, D.C., but there's plenty of people here who make their living doing that and are really, especially in progressive politics. So I'm sure that there are people thinking about that right now. We've always had the guy on the right wing, Tim Eyman, who ran in the primaries against Jay Inslee as a Republican. He's always getting initiatives passed in Washington State. I would think that in Seattle, you can probably look forward to seeing that kind of citywide initiative soon, because that's how we got campaign finance reform, public funding of our city elections and things like that. It was all through citizens reform. I mean, the politicians didn't do it themselves. They're all part of the money-making party machine, So it took the people to say, hey, we want democracy vouchers. So now in Seattle during city elections, the city mails us democracy vouchers, and there's public funding, a certain amount of money set aside to fund the public campaigns. And they've always been nonpartisan. Like I said before, everybody here in Seattle who gets elected to the city council is at least a Democrat. And a lot of them are Greens, and at least one a socialist. So it's not like there's a big Republican presence in Seattle. They don't even have an office, I think, in Seattle. They would be they're more like in Bellevue, the more wealthy suburbs of Seattle. That's
what else is new? Yeah, that's where they are.
Yeah.
That's where they are in most of the countries and wealthy suburbs. Even that is declining, although I think Biden is trying to bring them back. I don't know if you heard the quote today, and I'm not sure if we have it, Ron, for Mark. If we do, let me know, Mr. Kreider. But one of the things that happened today is that Joe Biden said to a Fox reporter that, I am not a socialist. I was the one who defeated the socialists in the primary, and, I don't believe in it. I don't know how you feel, but I'm wondering a lot of the people that you talk to, including Ms. Sawant, as you mentioned, the Democratic Socialist in the city council, and others who are supporters of Bernie Sanders, would be kind of a little annoyed, a little PO'd that that's what Joe Biden is saying, without mentioning Sanders by name. I just think it makes no sense. Any thoughts on that? I presume maybe it hasn't made the attention in Seattle yet, but to me, that's a big middle finger.
Well, there's a big issue with how party politics works in Seattle. So you have people who just see Joe Biden as a placeholder. He's like the best we can get, whatever. Yeah. And then, but that's not the style of politics that's likely to get people elected in this part of the country. I mean, I'm sure Jay Inslee is all for... I'm sorry if I'm losing a little bit of sound every once in a while. But
no, go right ahead. I can hear you.
But I'm sure that Jay Inslee is going to come out, and already has come out for Joe Biden, and will totally support him 100%. But I'm hoping that Inslee will end up in the cabinet somewhere to add his voice to environmental protection and climate change and things like that, because I think he's much more progressive than Biden, and he represents much more of a new style of politics, which is a less World War II generation and more kind of a new style. So you have that. I think Joe Biden is not the cat's meow in Seattle, let's put it that way. But people will get behind him, I think, just because they feel they have to. That's the limited choice that we have. And people are just sick of the whole Trump regime. It's gone way too far. It's gone kind of nutsy crazy at this point. I mean, they're just...
Well, there's no doubt, and we got to run, but I know you're spot on. I just think that you can make it a little easier if you win by 10 points. And as our good friend David Paleologus says, the voters are the people who are the Bernie supporters. They're young, they're people of color, they're Latinx. These are all areas that Biden has been weak on. So let's see if he can make amends and move forward. Believe me, it'd make my life and a lot of other progressives who are doing radio and internet and TV a lot easier too. To have a candidate who's moving to the left. That's where the Democratic Party is going. That's where the future of the country is going. When E.J. Dionne, who wrote a book about Bill Clinton and the third way and the centrist way 30 years ago, comes out and says, progressives are the way to go, and Democratic establishment should let them lead the way. That, to me, is an example of where it's going. Someone, a great journalist like him, to say that. Hey, Mark, take care of yourself. Democracy Watch News. Good luck on the sound today.
Thank you. Watch my Democracy Watch News reports and also my YouTube channel, the MTC Report, because I'm doing a lot of reports about what's happening up here in Seattle and around the rest of the country. And keep up the good work, Jeff. We'll talk to you next week. We're going to have a good time today out on the water.
Hey, enjoy it. Have an IPA for me, man.
Okay. Here's to you, Jeff, and the Revolution Radio Network.
The virtual toast to you, my friend. Thank you, MTC. What a great guy, great journalist, folks. One of these days, when after the pandemic, hopefully
60,
we can go out there and do a live broadcast, maybe on the boat. All right, I want to thank Ron Kreider for producing this broadcast. Thank you for listening. Keep on fighting, folks. We try to do this every day, and that's my motto for myself. I hope it's the motto for you, too. Keep safe, and we will look forward to chatting with you tomorrow. My name is Jeff Santos, and it is now my time to say I gotta go.